Hello, welcome to the 4-week class on preparing players tactically and mentally for tournaments. I'm Matt. I know a lot of you. If you don't know me, you've probably seen me around Bromley and things. First of all though, big well done for signing up. It's really great that you want to get involved in this way. It makes massive sense to me for you guys to have the skills to help the players at tournaments, because you guys will see the players way more than we will. And also a massive part of this class that we're going to learn, a huge part of it is going to be about knowing the players. No one knows the kids better than you do, so it makes perfect sense to me. Don't worry if you don't think that you have a lot of tennis ability or any tennis skills. A, you probably have way more than you think you do, and B, you don't need any tennis skills to be very, very effective in this area. Don't even worry about it. Usual rules apply. If you have any questions, you want to bounce something off me, you throw it in an email, give me a ring, give me a text, grab me when you see me at work. Absolutely fine. There are no silly questions, no wrong answers. Just give it a whirl. You should also have participants list. Okay, so this is 30 people who have signed up, which is great. The best courses and best qualifications I've ever had are when it's been like a collaboration effort. I don't really like learning when it's just a sort of parrot fashion, do as I say sort of thing. I much prefer it when you get some information and you make it your own thing. You know, you put your own spin on it. You see how it aligns with your philosophy. So one thing that will definitely make you stronger in this area is if you talk to each other. If you see a person on this list that you know and you're friends with, get together, talk about it, bounce ideas off each other, send each other your work, and it will make you a lot stronger in this. So that's why that's there. If you need anyone's contact, then get in touch with me. I'll get in touch with them, make sure it's okay, and then probably send it you absolutely fine. Okay, so before we start, you should have obviously the participants list. You should have the tactical components checklist. That's 2 pages. You should have the finished article. That is what that is. Notebook, pen, and yeah, good to go. Okay, so the 4-week course obviously had a big long title, you know, effective preparation things. It's all going to boil down to something called POETS. Okay, and that stands for Player, Opponent, Environment, Time, Space, and Score. This was something that I did for a project on a qualification I was on a few years ago, because it was something that really interested me in preparing players as best as possible for matches, because I think it's an area that isn't taught very well. It's also, if you haven't spoken or you haven't dealt with either a coach who has played at a high level or a coach who has coached at a high level, it's not something which is generally thought of too much. So like I said, it's called POETS. It's like poets with an extra S on the end. We're going to learn all about it. As I said, the purpose for this now is 3 things. This is your goal. The goal of POETS and the goal of the coach in that situation is threefold. Number 1 is to get the players feeling good. Get them in a good space, get them feeling loose, get them ready for the match. Number 2 is to raise their awareness as much as possible tactically. And number 3 is to raise their awareness as much as possible emotionally. I use the term raising awareness because I read not so long ago that the human brain has obviously neural pathways and things, and sometimes it can reroute certain pathways, and basically the human brain can handle anything, absolutely any kind of tragedy or elation, or it can handle anything except for uncertainty. That is the only thing that the human brain can't really handle. So that got me thinking, well, how can we eradicate as much uncertainty from a player before he goes on court or she goes on court? So, for example, let's say we have player A goes on court and plays against a real horrendous cheat, like a filthy cheat. Melts down, goes to pieces. We've all seen it. We've all felt really bad. I've done it myself. It happens. Imagine if we had that same player, and before we went on court against the same person, the same match, we talked to that player about the possibility of him being cheated, and put a plan in place for if it happens. So that would take about 3 minutes to talk about, and then maybe you write it down. But he walks on court now with a plan if he gets cheated. He gets cheated, it's the same player, it's a disgrace. That player handles that situation way better because we've eliminated the uncertainty. In his mind, it's gonna, oh yeah, look, it happened. Don't worry, I've got a plan in place for this. There's nothing uncertain about this. It wasn't a surprise because he's talked about it before the match. This isn't theoretical, guys. I know this because I've seen it and I've done it myself. I have prepared players well for a match, and I have prepared players badly for a match when I first started coaching years ago. And the difference is amazing. How they handle situations. It's absolutely amazing. So that's the job. That's the job of poets. That's the job of you. From this point forth, you're coaches. You're not really parents. You're the coach at the tournament, so you need to be au fait with all this stuff. You need to be rock solid. As I said a minute ago, you guys will know a lot about tennis, but the reason that you will make brilliant pre-match coaches is because a massive part of this is relating to the player and knowing the player. All right. The really hard part for a coach in this situation, let's say I coach probably 6 or 7 players individually. They might have 6 or 7 totally different personalities, and you have to find the method that works for each one. For example, one girl I know, she likes it all written down. This is her. This is Monday this week. This is her. Loves it all written down. Has a book on court. Loves it. I have another player who doesn't like writing stuff down and doesn't like books, in fact, and that's it. If I forced him to do something he didn't want to do, it completely backfires and it counteracts. So you have to know your player. Now, no one knows the players, your kids, better than you do. So you will be brilliant at this because 75% of it is relating to the player and knowing what is going on in their mind. When they say they're fine, you know what they really mean. And you know what winds them up. You know what they can handle. You know what makes them kick off. You know what they get, gives them a buzz. You've got all this information because you know them better than anybody else on the planet. So you will be superb at this. Right, so there we go. This is what it is. It's called Poets. I don't like the word checklist. I used to call this a checklist, but it's now become so much more than that. But we do have the tactical checklist here. It's basically like, imagine if you were doing an MOT without the checklist. You just had to think of things and pass or fail the car. You'd be nowhere near as effective if you didn't have your checklist. When I assess coaches, whether they've passed or failed on coaching courses, they give me a checklist. And a lot of it is as you can imagine, a lot of it is tick box, literally. But it's so helpful because I forget things and I just run down my checklist. When I'm analysing a player's technique, I have my own personal checklist that I run through. I start from the ground up and then it gets complicated and I go through. But that's mine, and I can analyse now probably 5 or 6 players like that really quickly because I really own my checklist in my mind. So these processes, these templates, all they do is they allow us to get usable information quickly and they lock it into place. And that's the job of poets. Like I said, you've got your 3 goals: get them feeling good, tactically aware, emotionally aware. We need 5 or 6 points. That's it. 5 or 6 usable pieces of information in the pre-match chat. That doesn't have to be tactical. That can be completely emotional. That can be completely tactical. It depends. But 5 or 6 really strong, usable pieces of information. And that, I guarantee, will translate to points, probably games, in the match. So that's it. That's poets. Let's get on to the first assignment. Okay, first assignment then. We're going to watch a video. There's two players, two separate events. I've given these players loads of information and they've got to imagine they're playing a match. Okay, so one of them actually is at a tournament. She's not playing in it, but she's at a tournament. She's watching her sister. I've given them lots of information and they're pretending to do their pre-match chat. We've chosen players that they know really well. Your job, okay, it's where you need your paper and pen, is to count how many times they say something which you consider to be usable, salient, strong information that they can take on to a match. That's it. Off we go.
Hello, Eloise. Hello. Okay, we're at Queenswood. Okay, we're actually here now, and Eloise is imagining that she pre-match sort of chat, feedback, thoughts, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so you're playing her after those boys are finished now. So they're finishing in about, I don't know, half an hour. You're going to be on court in these conditions, in this environment, and you're playing this girl. Okay, off you go.
I need to hit it to her backhand because she prefers it forehand.
Yeah.
And she likes to do a few drop shots every now and then.
Okay.
She doesn't like she gets quite a lot back.
Right.
But she doesn't necessarily loop them up. She just
Okay.
slices it over the net.
Okay. So you're saying that she gets the ball back, but maybe doesn't do an awful lot with it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? You happy?
With Angus,
All right,
hi
well
Angus.
done, thank you.
Angus is, we're imagining Angus is next on, court 10 at Bromley, and he's playing against Michael and Kerouan, who you know very well, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, Angus, tell us your pre-match thoughts.
Gonna try and be consistent but also aggressive so that he's got a big frame so we want to move him.
Okay. Anything else?
You want to just try and stay consistent on his serve because it's fairly big but
Yep.
can be inconsistent.
Yeah, totally agree, yeah.
So try and capitalise on if he hits a weak serve and try and get a break of serve.
Okay, perfect. You feel good about the match?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Angus.
Okay. So there we go. We had a couple of players. We had Eloise and we had Angus, and they were talking about the match. Now, hopefully, before we start, that would have rung some bells. That you will have seen that kind of talk before. So I imagine loads of you have done loads of pre-match chats before a match at a tournament, and it sounds a little bit like what you've just seen there. Okay. So have a think about your number, how many points you think that they said. Personally, and again, it's just my point of view, Eloise had 1, Angus had almost 1. All right. Let's watch those videos again, and I've written a few notes to show you where the strong points are.
Off you go.
So Amalia likes to hit hard.
Yep.
And she's a bit of a cheat, so everything on the line she goes out.
Okay.
So I need to bring my margins in a bit.
Yep.
I need to hit it to her backhand because she prefers it forehand.
Yep.
And she likes to do a few drop shots every now and then.
Okay.
She doesn't like she gets quite a lot back.
Right.
But she doesn't necessarily loop them up. She just
Okay.
slices it over the net.
Okay. So you're saying that she gets the ball back, but maybe doesn't do an awful lot with it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? You happy?
With Angus, hi
well done,
Angus.
thank you.
Bye.
Angus is, we're imagining Angus is next on, court 10 at Bromley, and he's playing against Michael and Kerouan, who you know very well, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, Angus, tell us your pre-match thoughts.
Gonna try and be consistent but also aggressive so that he's got a big frame so we want to move him.
Okay. Anything else?
You want to just try and stay consistent on his serve because it's fairly big but
Yep.
can be inconsistent.
Yeah, totally agree, yeah.
So try and capitalise on if he hits a weak serve and try and get a break of serve.
Okay, perfect. You feel good about the match?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Angus.
Okay, so there are my notes on the two pieces of work there. So, first of all, obviously, a couple of things, do you know what I mean? Those two videos are perfect for this class. They are absolutely perfect. They are so typical of junior players. So typical. I'm not saying, I'm not going to go at Eloise or Angus there. They did a great job. They did the best they could possibly do in the circumstances. But you could see, I've had 100 of those conversations with kids of that age. Like I said, I don't think any of that was usable except for one bit of information from Eloise and maybe a tiny bit of information from Angus. You could notice how obviously it's a bit uncomfortable me sticking a camera in their face and saying, okay, just talk, but also I think they were searching for things to say, and then they'd think of something and say it, and so there was very little structure. The points were banging around all over the place. If we look a little bit deeper into it, the points didn't really make sense as well, a few of them. So we'll take Eloise. Eloise said a lot of good starting points. She said a lot of good stuff that all it needs to do is extrapolate further and then link it into more detail. Maybe we link into, I think she said that she needed to keep the ball, the girl's forehand was better than the backhand, so she had to keep the ball on her backhand. Well, how are you going to do that? What shot are you going to use to do it? What situations? If she's running around her backhand to cover it, then what are you going to do next? How does that link into course? Loads of things like that. But she started a lot of things really well. Another thing that I forgot to mention earlier. When I first did the poets, it was for quite high level players. So Neil, who is a coach at work now, he was on my academy, and he really bought into this. He did the poets really, really well. His poets, because of his age, so he was 26, were almost completely tactical, because he has his emotions in check on the most part. For the age group we're working at now, and this is where I've changed the system a little bit, and it's become less of a template parrot fashion, this is what you do, to move more towards you need to know your player, is because the age group that we're working with now, so the age group I work with mostly is under 14, 90% of this is emotional. And it was really interesting. Eloise's video, the second comment was something emotional. The girl cheats. That is so typical. When was the last time one of your kids came off court and said, oh yeah, I really couldn't handle that low slice down to the backhand? They come off court and they say things like, oh God, it's a hacker, he doesn't even play real tennis, or oh God, cheat, hate that person, oh my God, oh the wind, oh my, we are so angry. They go emotional very early, which is because of their age and the pressure that they're under and the situation they find themselves in. So we need to be very astute emotionally. Okay, so Eloise went with her point about cheating. Now what she said next highlights perfectly why we need this structure in place. Eloise said that the girl is known to be a cheat, so you have to bring your margins in. So Eloise is saying that she's going onto that match court now, changing her game style, her game, for the worse, because she thinks the girl might cheat her. You don't have to be a genius to work out. That's not going to end well for Eloise. That's going to go really, really badly. What we need to do in that situation, and again I know it's only an isolated point, but we need to validate the emotion. So when Eloise talks about the girl's going to get her cheat, we need to extrapolate, well hang on, what's the problem here now? What don't you like about that? What's the situation? And it'll turn out Eloise, she'll talk about the injustice of it, she'll talk about the anger, and we need to validate those emotions really strongly. And then we need to give her a much better plan than don't aim so close to the lines. And that's her job. We need to send her on court, both tactically and emotionally, way more aware than she is right now. If Eloise goes on court and thinks, oh, I just won't aim quite so close to the lines because this girl's a massive cheat, the chances of Eloise being able to do that under pressure and being okay with it when the girl cheats her anyway or she misses, it's meltdown, and we've all seen it. We all know what's going to happen next. So that was really interesting. Eloise's really good strong point was she gave really good information on, she said how the girl, not only did the girl defend, she gets a lot of balls back, but then she talked about how she gets the ball back. That's a really strong point. That was the only one that I thought, yeah, that's good usable information. What she then had to do was extrapolate further and say, and therefore this is what I'm going to do. So I'm not going to, for example, I think she said that the girl just gets the ball back quite low. She doesn't go for height and shape, and by time, Eloise might say, so I'm going to make sure my court position is very tight on the baseline. I'm not going to go too far back because we know it's not going to come up high. Brilliant, perfect. An extra 10 seconds of talking, and that's a really, really strong point. Angus, a little bit different. The first thing that Angus says is a kind of mixture of a lot of different points. I think he talks about his need to be consistent, but also the need to be an aggressive baseliner. And I think the reason for that was because of Mike's suspect movement, in his opinion. Again, there's not an awful lot of, that's just words, that's just talking. He then goes on to talk about Mike's serve, and he identifies it as a possible weapon. And that's good, that's solid. He says, you know, sometimes though it's a bit hit and miss. Again, really good information. But then he says, so I just need to be consistent on that. Well, how? You've just told me that the guy's got a cannon and you're just going to be consistent. Well, why? What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? Are you going to change your recovery position? Are you going to start a different place? Are you then going to change? You know, there's a million different things that he's got to say next. It'll be another 10 seconds and that would be a really strong point. So on the whole, I hope that you can see that they struggled with that. And I gave them an awful lot of information. I gave them a lot of clues as well. I said things like, the environment. I said, you're in this environment, Eloise, I think. And I said, I really made a big song and dance about that. I talked about the fact that Angus was on court number 10, you know, we were training on it at the time. He needs to, so I gave him a lot of clues. I hope you can see that they looked uncomfortable talking about it. They didn't really know what to say. And I hope, I'm guessing here now, I strongly suspect you'll have heard that conversation a lot before, obviously from your kids. I've heard it millions of times from that age group. That for me highlights beautifully why we need the poet's structure in place. Why it has to be there, because they're trying their best and they think they're doing a good job. Actually, they're going on court with, in Angus's case, no real information, and in Eloise's case, possibly something detrimental in her mind as she goes on court. So, like as I say, that is a brilliant example of why we need to really tighten this up. Right, okay, let's get started on the poets. All right, the aim of this now, so at the end of 4 weeks, you have, based around your kids, your player, a really comprehensive tactical and emotional checklist that you can just run through at a tournament. The reason you're going to be excellent at it is because you know your kids really well, you know emotionally how they tick, and then we're going to talk about the tactical things as well. So all the tools are in place now for this to be really superb. Come the summer when they've got tournaments, you can be absolutely brilliant at this. So as I said, POET stands for player, opponent, environment, time, score and space. There's the finished article. At the end of the 4 weeks, you'll be able to do these. You won't copy mine. You're going to have your own template, your own thing. It might be 3 times the size of this. It might be hardly anything. Again, that will depend on your player and how you relate to them. The only 2 people which really need to understand what's going on, well, 3. You, your kids, maybe their individual coach. Okay, but if anyone that I coach is watching this now and practicing and they have a system in place with their kids that I don't understand, fine. As long as they know how it works with each other, that's it, that's all we need. I know I keep banging on about it, I know I keep hammering it. The goal of the POETs is get the kids in there feeling good, get them in a nice place, get them positive, get them ready for the match. Raise the awareness tactically, raise the awareness emotionally. That's the goal of this right now. We've got to do it quickly, and we've got to raise about 5 or 6 points which are usable, which are strong, and I use that word quite a lot because I like it, and that they have a direct result in a direct translation into the match they're about to play. Okay, so by the end of the 4 weeks, you'll have great knowledge in each one of these things. We're going to do 2 every week. and you'll be able to have your template. Just going back into this real quickly, the idea is that everything is sort of interlinked and things. So, for example, this is Lois's. She did this on Monday, or I did this, then she copied it into her book. She's talking here about being an aggressive baseliner. She has a forehand weapon, possibly her slice backhand is a weapon. I've written maybe. Her strengths are slice backhand, serve, and return a serve. And then if you follow that arrow back, it comes all the way back to AW, which is off wind. So it's part of environment, wind. AW against the wind, slice backhand short links all the way to here. So we've linked her game style into the environmental factors of the match, and that equals a game plan. And that's what this does. So Angus, when he said about Mike's serve could possibly be a weapon, if then he'd have backed it up and said, right, so I'm going to change my recovery position by a foot, I'm going to go back a little bit more. I know that Mike favours the curveball, so I'm going to cheat on my movement a little bit to the right on both sides. We know that the court surface is outdoor acrylic and they're quite new and they're quite gritty, which means it's going to slow it down. We're using head ATPs, tennis balls, and we know that they're a little bit suspect to fluff up. So, having said all this, I expect him to start off well, but as the match progresses, the balls get fluffier, the court is very slow. I'm going to get on this ball quite a lot. Perfect. There's a 360 link there. So from Mike having a good first serve to how Angus is going to handle it, and therefore how the environmental factors are going to help him or hinder him, and how he might have to change things. If you're playing Mike, say, and you say, okay, and there's a ball change 7 and 9 because we're playing at Wimbledon, you'd factor that in, you'd talk about it, and you'd change your game plan slightly. So there we go. I mean, there's a few things that link in quite nicely. We've talked about with the wind hitting shape and work. That's off the green clay line. We've talked there a little bit about opponent space, and there's a few things. It's 360. It's holistic. That's a good tactical plan. That's it. So that's the finished article. As I said, no more than 10 minutes. 5 to 6 really strong points. Prepare the player well. Get them in the right headspace, raise the awareness tactically, raise the awareness emotionally. Okay, right, so today we're going to get started on the P and the O, player and opponent. Okay, so this is it now, this is the poets, this is going to be the meat of what we learn. We're starting off with P and O, so player and opponent. We'll do player first. Player is the most important one by an absolute mile. If you're going to lock one thing in this whole 4 weeks, get this bit right. Okay. It's also the only bit where you really need your player to buy into this now. There's no point in you telling your kids what they are if they disagree with you. All right. If you're right and they're wrong, you've got to create a situation which it gets their buy-in, which highlights that you're right. I don't know, sometimes you're on court with a kid and they think their Western grip is fine. They think it's fine. And when I say, no, you need to change that, it's not good enough, they look at me like I'm stupid. So I could argue with them and get nowhere, or I can hit wide serves and I can chisel the backhand, and when they've missed 30, they go, oh yeah, maybe I need to change my grip. It's exactly that sort of situation. You need that buy-in. There has to be a quite high level of trust. There has to be a lot of ownership from the player here. So if we look at our tactical components checklist, player, we break it up into a few different categories. Game style, maximize weapons, minimize weaknesses, and anticipation. This section now, player is your player. It's your kid, it's your player. The first part is game style. So this is where we need to know what is your opponent's game style. So for example, I used to coach, Marcus Willis. So he was the guy that got to the second round of Wimbledon, played Federer. He was that guy. So he is 6 foot, probably 3, big strong lad, big left-handed serve. But he's in his core, in his actual sort of personality, he is a counterpuncher. So when the chips got were down, the going got tough, and he was tight, he actually hacked, like really hacked. When I first started with Marco, I actually coached badly in this area because I tried to change him. I tried to turn him into an aggressive player at big moments. I said, you have to go and take your win. I was like, you can't get... And then it dawned on me, this was in his DNA. So instead, we turned him into the absolute best counter-puncher that he could be. And sure enough, his ranking went up. He started winning big points all the time. He had this whole different philosophy. He said, he used to say things like, it's their responsibility to hold, not my responsibility to break. And I go, yeah, no, I just completely disagree with that as a player. I hated that. But for him, perfect. So I used to nod along, go, yep, that's absolutely right, bud. Fine. It's what was inside him. So we have to get this right. There's no point in guessing. So, the difference between counterpuncher and aggressive baseline is incredibly small. It might just be a tiny little difference. I'll just run through them. Aggressive baseliner, this is quite simply somebody who would rather hit a winner than you miss. You know, they really like going for it. Del Potro is an aggressive baseliner. I would say John Isner is an aggressive baseliner. I'm not sure if Nadal is, but I'd probably bet that he was. It's that kind of aggressive, they're going to come at you, they're going to go for it, player. Counterpuncher is Andy Murray, Novak Djokovic, that kind of player. Now, like I said, the difference between Andy Murray and, let's say, Del Potro, I mean, is there a difference really? We give those two the same inside-out forehand. They're probably going to do the same thing. But it comes down to tiny little differences. So let's say it's 5-all in the 5th set, deuce at Wimbledon. I think Murray would like you to come at him and come to the net and he'll pass you. I think Del Potro quite fancies an inside-out forehand. That's it. It's when it comes down to pressure situations in their court. Djokovic is an easy one. You know, he hasn't got the cannon first serve that Murray used to have. It's kind of obvious that he's all about you're going to miss. You know, and okay, he hits winners. But you can see that his best shot is a return of serve. You can see that. All court player. This is like LTA language. That doesn't mean all courts. That means they can play from all phases of the court. So the only real one that we have now is Federer. He can kind of do it all. He can out rally you. He can out hit you. He can serve volley. He can do it all. They are remarkably rare. Net rusher, again, ridiculously rare. They still exist. Nowhere near as many anymore. I can't think of a player at Bromley who would be a net rusher. And then other considerations such as a game built around a huge serve. Sometimes, rarely, you play players where it's all about the serve. And after the serve, it's kind of average, but the whole game is built around that serve. Again, at the age group we're talking about now, it's very unlikely we're going to talk about that. So the two that you're really going to have to think about are aggressive baseliner and counterpuncher. Are your kids aggressive baseliner and counterpuncher? Some of the things you can ask: who are their favourite players? Who would they like to be? If they say, "Oh, I love watching Djokovic," you might think, "Okay, you enjoy the sliding into shots and the countering and all that sort of thing." If they say, oh my goodness, give me Del Potro, I love creaming forehands, then you kind of know they're an aggressive baseliner. I know what all my players are that I coach. I know what they are. I'm not 100% sure whether they know what they are just yet. I think a few of them would say, oh, I'm this player, and they're not. There's no point in rushing it. They'll find their own way. But it's incredibly important that you get that. Once you've got that, once you know which game style you are, then you can start to lock in your characteristics. So, maximize weapons. So, take when I was a player, if I was doing player on myself, I was an aggressive baseliner, definitely. My weapons were my forehand and my first serve. My strengths were my backhand, my movement, my volleys were pretty good. the way that I used to maximise my strength, really simple ones, used to serve wide and look for my weapon straight away, my forehand. I was quite adept at hitting wide serve on the outside, then hitting inside in on the forehand. A bit more complicated ones, I used to hit a really nice in to out curve, a side spin slice down the line, which forced my opponent to hit up, and I knew I was fast enough to hit a forehand on the next ball. That always got my forehand in. Practice a lot of inside out forehands, getting around my backhand. Wasn't afraid to go backhand line because I knew I was fast enough to cover the court if they then countered cross. So that was another way of doing it. Again, weaknesses, when you get to that level, it's not really about weaknesses, it's about getting your weapons into the rally, because not many players have massive weaknesses. If I was tired, my second serve was attackable. So to counter that, to minimise it, when I was tired, I would hit a lot of cut. So it stayed low and it faded away. And that was it. I mean, I've talked a little bit about anticipation now already. So that was me as a player. So if we go back to this now, we start with game style, and then you need to know, like, what are the weapons. Take Mike, for example. We've always talked about him. His weapons are his serve and his forehand. So he needs to know, how does he set them up, how does he use them, and how does he follow it up. So there's no point saying, oh yeah, I'm going to get on my forehand, which again, a lot of the kids will say, oh yeah, I'm going to use my forehand before the match. And the obvious question is, well, how? How are you going to do it? What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do next? When they answer those three questions, that's thorough. That's a strong point. So, I'm going to be aggressive and get on my forehand. Okay? I'm going to look to try and get the first strike in on my forehand. The court surface is clay, which should give me enough time to get around my backhand. I'm going to go inside out because the recovery position, I don't want to go too far, I don't give them the angle. So I'm going to go inside out heavy, and that's going to start me off getting me the first strike in. There we go. Perfect. If I'm against the wind, I might taper that a little bit. If I'm with the wind, I'll do it more. The guy's a lefty, so I won't recover quite. Perfect. There's all the information you need. But look how that links in. If the player has any weaknesses, now remember, this is for a match. So it could be that the player has a weakness for one match and might not have a weakness for another match. I don't know. Maybe one of the kids does not like lefty backhands cross court. It really gets him. He doesn't like it at all. But actually, against a righty, they're fine. So you might, for that match against lefty, talk about how to protect the weaker areas. You might adapt something tactically. So this first point here on minimise weakness, protecting a weaker area by adapting tactically could be something really simple. So I can remember playing a match once where I knew the guy had me backhands cross. I knew it. So I didn't hit any backhands cross. That's it. I know it sounds simple, but that's quite a brave thing to do, because then it opens the court massively. I had to though, and I ended up beating him because I knew that backhands cross he had me. So there's an example of changing tactically. I don't normally like. I didn't used to like hitting backhand line too much because it opens the court. I didn't like it. But for that match, I did it again. I went against the grain. So that's something you might do to adapt tactically. Again, making it more challenging for the opponent to expose them. You might adapt your court coverage. You might go. You're playing against a lefty who is really good at hitting a lefty forehand cross court and exposing your backhand. Maybe you cover the court slightly more into the outside. Maybe you back off a little bit because the court surface is slower, therefore you've got more time to get out there. Maybe you come forward more. Don't let him do it. Don't let him get that first strike in. I don't know, whatever, but these are all these sorts of things you can talk about. Playing more neutral shots, being more disciplined and choosing more carefully to play more, play your offensive shots. Again, it's something we talk about at work all the time, is the discipline levels. If your weakness is something as simple as you make too many errors, well then be more disciplined tactically. Don't go for that ball when it's 50-50. Wait until it's on. That again would be something you talk to your your player about. Anticipation comes into three areas. We've got geometrical, we've got technical, we've got tactical. We've talked about cheating recovery quite a lot. Again, you're playing the lefty. He's been ripping you cross court all day long. You might not recover quite as tight to the new middle as you might have done at the start of the match. My return of serve position used to vary a lot against lefties. Righties it didn't tend to. You're playing on a slow court and you decide to be further back because of the high bounce. But by going further back, you open more space to your sides. So therefore, by going further back, you might have to go across a little bit as well. So that's geometrical anticipation. Technical anticipation, we talked a little bit with the players about this at work. The classic is if you let the ball drop, you're going cross court. Okay. Again, this is one of the only things in this whole thing which is technical. So let's leave that one. It's difficult to explain except for if we're on a tennis court. If ever you want me to come on and show you, yeah, we'll just go on court and I'll show you exactly what that means. But it's not the most important bit of this at all. And then tactical anticipation. This is the cornerstone of this whole thing. You go and scout your future opponent, and they're kicking non-stop serves out wide and outside. You would definitely adapt your starting position on the return of serve, definitely. So that's tactical anticipation. All that is you as your player. So for Lois's, we didn't do an awful lot on Monday. Player, aggressive baseline, weapon, forehand, maybe slice backhand, strength, slice backhand, backhand, serve and return. Then a little line off there from the forehand talking about controlling space. Then a line down to how to use a slice backhand against the wind. There we go. Now the reason that can be quite a short one for Lois is because she has an incredible ownership of her game. Her player is strong. Really good at that. Okay, I think now would be a very good time for you to either if your kids are there, go and get them and talk this through and start making some notes on your player. If they're not, fine, write down what you think. Use the template here. So what the game style is. What are their weapons? Now, the key thing here now for me is setting up and following up. If you're saying that the forehand is the weapon, then okay, how are you going to set up? You can do perfect world situation now, so don't worry about, are you playing Nadal on the clay or anything like that. You just pretend that your kids can dominate this match enough to do what they want to do. Any weaknesses, and then you can talk about the anticipation too. Yeah, as I said, if your players are there, get them involved now. If they're not, doesn't matter. Do it yourself. You'll be surprised how right you'll get it anyway. So yeah, give that a whirl, and then press play when you've got that all sorted. Okay, so hopefully maybe if you've done it on here, you've got your notes. You've got your notes in here, and it's a bit more thorough. Don't worry if this is note form. I mean, this is you're going to do like loads of these. Let's move on to opponent. So the game style grid here now. This is everything that can possibly be. The absolute classic is obviously aggressive baseliner and counter puncher. That's what we see all the time now. So now for this, now you need to imagine an opponent. In the videos, I think Lois knew that girl, I didn't know her. Angus chose Michael, that we know really well. You need to choose an opponent. So the reason for this is because it doesn't really matter what your opponent's game style is. It matters how your player's game style matches up against that game style. So, for example, if I'm an aggressive baseliner and I'm playing against a counter puncher, it's a really simple one. The coach might say to me, hey, this is a +1 match, which means this is going to take you one more shot. It's a really good counter puncher. And also, if you come into the net, watch out for the short slice cross. He loves that ball. And we get that information going. If it was, I'm an aggressive baseliner and this guy you're playing is an aggressive baseliner, okay, we've got to get the first strike in. We've got to get your game into this match before he gets his game into this match. His weapon is his forehand, same as yours. So how can we make sure he doesn't hit many forehands? You know, where are you going to serve? Where are you going to hit this? You get the general idea. My thing, I could not stand playing. It was net rushes. I hated it because you got no rhythm. You couldn't drill. I didn't like it. So I needed a coach who could have given me a better plan for when I played Netbridge. I very rarely beat them. I lost to Luke Bourgeois in a final and a semi. I lost to Bloomfield in 2 big finals. Just did not like playing against them. Definitely though, I could have had a better plan going on to play them, because things that angered me were easy to play against. Bloomfield, for example, I look back now, I used to get really angry because he used to take ages between points, and he'd come up and ace you. And it's like, oh, for God. And then you'd walk across the court really slowly, and I'd come on, and then he'd ace you again. Oh, Jesus. And you got no rhythm. Now, if I could have prepared if I could have prepared for that easily, we could have just talked about it and then had a plan, and really easy. If I was coaching me in that situation, we could have prepared for that really, really easily. So that was my thing. I didn't like that. So pick an opponent now, and then you got to work through your sheet. The key things here are exactly what's written down. How does your player's game style match up against the opponent's game style? Pick an opponent that you're pretty sure you know what game style they are. And then you've got to make some notes to the side about what that means. I've given you some examples there. The classic is you're playing against a player who's going to get the ball back more, therefore it's a +1, it's a +2. And don't forget as well, this is the emotional thing. Why do players dislike, at this age, why do kids dislike playing hackers? Because they get on their nerves, they get angry, they get panicky, they redline, they hit, they get, and then they miss, and they go, and then they start saying things like, "It's not tennis," and that's it. The emotions have gone, and they go. So, on your plan now, let's say that the opponent is a really, really, really big hacker, a counter puncher. Don't forget, this has to be tactical and it has to be emotional. Okay? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And then a really, really important consideration is the last box. This is big. So, technical characteristics. For this now, I would look at grips. For example, grips on ground strokes. Specifically, are they really Western? Now, if a player is really Western, bear with me for 2 seconds. Okay, had to go and get a racket. So, like I said, a hugely important one of these is the other considerations. The technical characteristics of the opponent are really important. So, one of the main ones is the grip. The grip now, as we look at it, if the hand moves this way, that's east. If the hand moves that way, it's west. It's the other way round. So if you think about your news thing, the weather symbol, it's the other way. So you think about it as west is like that now for me. It's the other way. So west is that way, east is this way. A really common one with players at the age group that we're working with now is the grip has gone too far west. So this is for when players are receiving balls that are too high for them from an early age. If a player moves, they should really be playing green and they're playing real ball and the ball is too high. Imagine a tug of war. Your elbows in is strong, and it's exactly the same on tennis. If the elbow is high, your elbow stays low. That's quite strong for me, but it creates this Western grip. Western grip isn't great because you can't really generate all that much force and you can't handle low balls or wide balls. Really, really common with players of the age group that we're working with. The reason it's on here is because we can prepare our players to exploit that weakness quickly. For example, if you've got a racket handy, go and get it. A Western grip, as I said, if you put the racket on the ground and just pick it up, the V of the hand will be like that on the back of the grip, then turn it over. That's a Western grip now. Okay? What I'd like you to do is, first of all, imagine hitting with it and thinking, there's not an awful lot there, but reach out. So if you've got somebody with you, ask them to put their hand out and reach out to full extension of the arm and then try and push. There's nothing there. If I just reach to the fire there now and just try, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing there in the contact. Now the way we can use that is, let's pretend our player, Bromley player, is playing against another player and we know they've got a big Westie grip. Serve wide. get them wide on the stretch, because you know there's no weight on there. It might not come back. If it does come back, you know there's no weight behind it, so it can't go across. Therefore, remember what we said about the player at the start, anticipation on their recovery. They might not recover quite to the new middle, they recover a little bit over because they know they're not going to break the sideline, and they're on their weapon. That's a perfect, lovely little holistic plan for exploiting opponent's weakness and not only setting up but using your weapons. If a player is more Eastern, I'm quite Eastern. People say that they're good at, that's flat, they can't hit spin, not really. And a semi-Eastern grip, they can kind of anything. The best grips are semi-Eastern to semi-Western. You can do most things from both those two. If a player is extreme, you'll know about it. Quite a few players at Bromley are extreme. They've got, myself and the other coaches are working to bring it back. Are they right-handed or left-handed? Huge consideration. You need to know that. Single-handed versus double-handed. Again, massive. If you're playing, if your player is playing against a player who has a single-handed backhand, the first thing they've got to test in that match is can they hit above the shoulder. So again, get your racket again. Ask someone with a hand up. Try and push there. There's nothing there. I've got nothing here. The best player of all time slices from up here. So that's again a quick test. I've lost count of the amount of players I've watched play a one-handed backhand opponent and not tested heavy moonball into that ad side. Again, if you put that into your plan, that's a really nice holistic one. You're playing on the clay, it's high bouncing, your forehand is your weapon, so why not, early on in the match, skip round, rip heavy ball, recover just off centre, and let's see what happens. That is a way of using your weapon, that is a way of trying to exploit his weakness. Opponent's grips and preparation, so we've mentioned Western and Eastern. Another one could be grip on the serve. If it's nudging towards forehand, they're not going to hit any kick. That means they're probably going to hit either flat or cut, which means you can cheat your recovery, your starting position to the right a little bit if they're right-handed. Preparation could be their technique is very late. You see these players that are very rushed late on. Again, chances are they haven't got the time to go back cross. Again, have you ever played against them? A massive consideration. Remember at the start I said a lot of this was about emotion. If you've played somebody and you've beaten them, if you've played against somebody and you've lost to them, if you've played against someone recently, all these things lead to a different path. I remember a player saying to me once, I don't want to play this guy. I said, why not? You beat him last week. He went, exactly. I went, oh, yeah, okay, fair enough, yeah. So again, it's not an issue as long as it's identified. Remember, one of our golden rules is we validate emotions. So that section there now is pure emotion. You got to validate it. You lost to him the last 3 times and they're sulking about it, like, oh yeah, God, this guy again, he beat me 3 times. Then you spin it round, you go, oh my God, this is perfect. All the pressure's on this guy. He's got to beat you because he beat you 3 times already. That's brilliant. All of a sudden, it might spin round, it might change their tune a little bit. And then of course we've got the classic there on the end, it's cheater. We'll probably talk about that in environment as well. I have my ideas for how to handle cheaters. Why don't you come up with your own and then we'll talk about it. Personally, my belief is that you can never stoop to a cheater's level. You have to keep your discipline, you have to keep your respect, you have to keep your dignity. But you can't lose the match because of it. So again, I've got my ways of dealing with it that I advise the players, but you know your kids better than anybody else, so maybe you come up with one as well. But cheat back is not an option. Okay, so there we go. That is player and opponent. We're going to work through this sheet for the first week. If you want to send me what you've got before next Friday, brilliant. Send it over. If not, and you want to show me your final thing all in one go, fine. So your assignment for the next week, Watch those videos again that I've done. Start to use those as a catalyst for getting the thought process going. And you got to work through this. As I said at the start, the most important section is that section right at the beginning of part 1. Game style in the P. It's the most important bit. You've got to get that right. What is your kid's game style? Okay, just run through them again one more time. An aggressive baseliner is Del Potro. It's kind of obvious. Counterpuncher, you'll think a few of these are aggressive baseliners, but they won't be. It's Andy Murray. It's Novak Djokovic. I'm not sure what Nadal is. I think he's somewhere in between. We'll have to ask him. The difference between an aggressive baseliner and a counterpuncher is minute. If you fed them 100 forehands, they would do the same thing on 99 of them. We'll only know when they're under extreme pressure, fatigue, tension, score pressure, expectancy, whatever. Just because someone's big and strong does not make them an aggressive baseliner. All court player, don't worry about it. Net rusher, don't worry about it. Other considerations built around a huge serve, yeah, don't worry about it. All the kids at Bromley are either aggressive baseliner or counterpuncher. Maybe Charlie has the ability to be a net rusher. Maybe. Maybe. 99 out of 100 kids are aggressive baseliners or counterpunchers. You've got to get that bit right. You've got to get that bit right. Before you even start, if you're not sure, give me a ring and we'll talk about it some more. The rest of it is all pretty self-explanatory. So you do the P on your kids, you do the opponent on someone you know, just make it up. Make it a compatriot, make it a rival. Don't do it on Federer. Do it on, like Angus did on Michael, Eloise did on that girl that she played. And that's it. Any questions? Fire it over. Any thoughts? Fire it over. Talk to each other. Involve your kids. And that's it. All right? Like I said, well done. All you need to do now is give it a whirl. Okay? All right.